Shalom, Michael. Thank you for joining us today.
I'm really happy to be here. It's a great pleasure.
So my first question will be about the future, because your scientific research starting 50 years ago already involved modeling and reasoning using sophisticated mathematics, algorithms, simulations, all to understand huge systems of biology and chemistry. This type of thinking has now become the toolbox of the present, ranging from purchasing on the internet and advertising to highly advanced machine learning and artificial intelligence to design medications and protect the environment. So you probably have a better idea than any of us of where the world is heading. What do you see emerging on the horizon?
So let me first start out by warning you that I'm an optimist. And this is actually something I have to say quite often these days because but I also try to tell people that I'm a pragmatic optimist in the sense that I don't think I was so optimistic when I was younger and I thought many bad things would happen. And with time, they haven't happened. So I guess I'm sort of revising my viewpoint to say, well, things aren't necessarily bad. I also try to get a very global view of situations, and very often the local view is much more pessimistic than the more global view. So you are right. In fact, I've been running programs. I did a calculation actually almost for 60 years. I started when I was 17 and I'm now 77. So it's been a long, long time. And there's no doubt that computer modeling has become incredibly important. Even more so is the generative AI that we're now seeing in things like ChatGPT and Claude and Bard and so on. So clearly, the world is in a situation where AI is really changing things. The fact is this has happened steadily over the 60 years. I actually got into science because of computers. At the age of 16 in South Africa, I heard about a computer playing tic-tac-toe. In those days, computers were very simple, but I was amazed. I thought, computers are fine. They can multiply numbers, they can add and subtract like calculators, but how do they play games? And, this has been something which fascinated me. And in fact, artificial intelligence has been around. I remember when I started my PhD in Cambridge in 1968, there were lots of books about artificial intelligence. We just didn't have the computer power to do it. So I think really we are now in a golden age of computing. Each of us, for me, one of the strongest numbers about computing is that each of us carries, in our hand our smartphone. And the smartphone is probably more powerful than all the computers in the world were maybe in 1980 or 1990, something like that. So each of us are carrying what would have been classified as a supercomputer in the 90s, and we have it in our pocket. And not only that, but about 80% of the world's population have it. I don't know, pretty much higher in Israel. So everyone has access now to massive amounts of information, massive amounts of computer power. And what is clear about AI is, what it does for us and what it does for the world. But it's clear that AI is going to make our phones much smarter. So we're going to all be carrying with us much, much smarter phones. So I think this is something which is going to make us smarter. And again, taking a broad perspective, looking back, over civilization, we're not necessarily smarter genetically than we were, say, 10,000 years ago, but our culture and our learning and our ability to learn from people who came before us, from books, from the internet, have made us much, much smarter. We're much more capable. We can do things that, are really impossible to believe even 10 or 15 years ago. So I think that thanks to the massive proliferation of advanced computing, of AI, of communication, we're all going to become smarter. And I think that people are actually pretty good when they're smart. So I'm actually very optimistic. This is a very broad picture view, and it clearly relates to education, which is very critical in making us smarter.
So as educators, of course, we're fascinated with this kind of developments, and the educators of today teach the current generation of teenager that will enter the adult world within 10 or 15 years. So in your perspective, what should they be taught? And what would be important for them to learn in school today? Should they learn more mathematics or statistics? Should they learn coding?
My first thing is going to be they should learn to ask questions. I think, since ChatGPT arrived on the scene at the end of November 2022, I've used it many, many times every day, literally. And now that I can speak to it, it understands my voice perfectly. I can whisper to it in a crowd and it still understands me. I just find the key thing is asking questions. And it's there are so many things that are interesting that you would never even ask somebody because it might seem like a stupid question. I'll give you an example. Men and women's shirts button in different directions.
Right.
So the question is why? And it turns out that men's shirts button the way they do, so you can use your left hand to open the shirt while you're holding a gun or sword in your right hand. But why should women's shirts be different? So according to GPT, basically women were typically, buttons were not used by lower class people, they were used by noble women who were typically being dressed by somebody. And the person dressing them has a much easier time dealing with buttons that are opposite to men's buttons.
I'm going to try it, to see whether it's.
So you can ask it anything. It's quite amazing. And oftentimes, I've asked it questions like political questions and medical questions. And the thing is that oftentimes if the question, if the answer doesn't satisfy you, you can say, no, I think you got this wrong. Please look up and tell me more. I recently, as you know very well, in Israel, the GPS is mixed up to say the least. So I actually asked GPT this question about a month ago, and it said, no, 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 no. There's no record of any GPT being mixed up, and it's a very hard thing to do. GPS spoofing is complicated and difficult. I'm sure it doesn't exist. I said, do me a favor, just read a few newspaper articles. So a few seconds, he came back again and said, oh my God, you're right. It's everywhere. So, the thing about it is to treat the computer like you would treat a smart friend. And I think children should learn to do this. I really do envision the AI revolution being massive because basically, right now, maybe 100 million people can ask questions at the same time. But this could easily become 1 billion people. So basically, AI has the capacity to answer everyone's questions in the world and answer them on their phone in a few seconds. And this just seems to me to be marvelous. I can see, quite soon, children's toys, teddy bears that you can talk to. And basically, why is mommy angry today? Well, and the machine is very, very good at customizing answers for 6-year-olds, for 3-year-olds, or whatever. So I actually think this is going to be something quite major. We're going to be interacting with computers verbally all the time. ChatGPT has a wonderful voice recognition interface. So you can literally talk to it in any language. It understands my Hebrew. If I want to write a letter in Hebrew now, I can't write Hebrew. I just dictate in Hebrew, and out comes perfectly written spelled thing. So I think this is going to be key. Now, the question is where does education fit into this? And this is difficult. I think in some ways, education at both school levels, but particularly at university levels, has changed very, very little, certainly in my lifetime. What has happened is that more people go to universities and maybe there's less specialization. I did my university studies in Cambridge, England, in London, England, in Cambridge, and it was very specialized. From the age of Bagrut, my matriculation, there was only mathematics and physics, maybe a bit of computer science. There was no literature. There was nothing like this. And I think what we need to do is teach children to ask questions, but also give them a feeling of what's out there. I guess I sometimes feel like I'm a bit like a 7-year-old kid. And I'm having so much fun now because I'm going to literature. I was reading Boccaccio's Decameron. I felt like reading it. I'd been in Italy. And then I said, this is really hard reading it in Old English. Is there a modern translation that makes it readable? And immediately GPT gave me one. And they're great stories. And, and I don't need to feel that I'm reading something that's ancient because they're very relevant. So I think that, and how, so I think asking questions, I would say the three things I would say: breadth, asking questions, and being happy to make mistakes. Now, these are very general things. In that framework, you don't need to teach children how to use a smartphone. They generally use it much better than we do. So that's very important. Asking questions is interesting because, I have used ChatGPT more than almost anyone I know. And people say, oh, it's because you're good at asking questions. But actually, each time I ask it something different and something new. And again, it seems to answer the question. So in some ways, I think when you ask a question, you have some reticence. You're not sure because you worry that the person will not know the answer. But if you try it and you see, and I was recently asking ChatGPT who will win the American election, and the immediate answer was, I have no idea. I said, no, come on. You know what the polls are. Do me a favor, go to the newspapers, read the polls, and tell me what the answers are. And of course, immediately he gave me a full answer. So it's a little bit like talking to somebody who's maybe a little bit too politically correct, but you can encourage them. So I think beyond that, and I think this is something I mentioned to you before, statistics is something, okay, maybe it's not a statistics, but it's a feeling for the size of things. So I've had many, many students in my career, and they've come from very different backgrounds. And what I've noticed is that the ones who've come from computer science have been really good programmers, wonderful about data structures and things like this, but they don't actually know how big things how big things are. They don't know how many atoms there are in a glass of water. They don't know how big the Earth is. They haven't learned physics. And also, they may know statistics because it's often taught in AI, but I think that children are not taught statistics. And I have, Shoshan and I have 10 grandchildren, and their ages are basically from 4 to 21, and the 21-year-old is in college. I don't worry about him, but we have 5 below 30, or no, 9 below 13. And I worry about them not knowing statistics. And I spent quite a lot of time looking for games. I actually asked GPT to suggest games for statistics, and there's surprisingly few. So it seems to me this is an area where, a lot of mathematicians are against statistics because it's not exact. But that's the whole purpose of it. It's not exact. I mean, the world isn't exact. Randomness is one of the most important things that we encounter, and fortune and chance. And understanding how to deal with them is incredibly important. Understanding what risk is. I mean, risk is not something you can, maybe you can calculate it mathematically, but it's an estimate. It'll never be sure. But knowing likelihood and risk is terribly important. So I think there's a real opportunity. I was surprised that I searched quite hard. I had GPT suggest many, many games. I downloaded them. And in the end, I came to the conclusion that, a couple of dice and a pack of cards is probably all you really need to learn statistics. One of my sons is a really good poker player. So he is very good at statistics. And he's also actually very good at investments because in some ways, there's the same mentality. If everyone thinks it's chance, but the smart thing is to know when the numbers are on your side, you do something. When the numbers are against you, don't do anything. So I think if I had one wish for a new area of educational development, it would be statistics. I think that computing is coming along fine. I think it's quite amazing. I think teachers should be learning how to use AI. So, for example, you can have AI. I can say to AI, I don't know legal Hebrew. Please give me a course in legal Hebrew, and it would do it. I could equally will say to ChatGPT, I don't know statistics, and I bet it could give me a good course. But I think teachers need to learn how to use AI to teach. A teacher who uses AI to teach will be a much better teacher than a teacher who doesn't. And also their job security will be much, much better.
Our final question for today, and as you know, these are very challenging times now in Israel, and we're recording this interview towards a big gathering of Israeli educators, sort of those people who are in charge of shaping Israel's future. What would be your message to Israeli educators today?
I would say my message to them is that you are the most important people in the country. I wish you were appreciated more. I think globally, the way teachers are paid and treated is not what it should be. I mean, nothing is more important than the next generation. And, and it's not like we're so great. In other words, if we said, well, we're really perfect, there's nothing to do. We never argue, we never fight, we never have problems. So psychologically, we're great, but we're not. And there's a huge amount to learn. And it all comes, I mean, most problems in society come from childhood, from early youth, and teachers are the most important force here. But I think this is the key message. I really do admire what you're doing quite immensely.
Thank you so much, Michael, for these important words and for being with us today. Shalom.
Shalom. Bye. Take care. Bye-bye.